I would like to introduce my longtime friend, Duncan Ainscough, who's the managing director of commercial and industrial for Gordon Brothers. Duncan, thanks for being part of our project. Really appreciate it. What are you seeing right now in the UK and in Europe generally relative to insolvency and what's happening with these borrowers?
Firstly, thanks for having me. Obviously, my responsibility here in London, I'm based in London, it covers the whole of Europe, and it's a big continent. So we go Russia, Turkey, North Africa, and a little bit beyond sometimes as well. So a big territory. So lots of different dynamics at work. The one single one is obviously the pandemic, which is global and it's affected pretty much every European country the same. Obviously all the central banks are pumping money in left, right, and centre. So the actual insolvency world that we play in is actually quietened down to virtually nothing. And here we are talking, where are we, 7th of December? And I mean virtually nothing. There's obviously still ongoing cases, but the sort of bad codes that were ready to fall fell very quickly. The companies that were affected directly by the pandemic, your travel companies, the hotel, leisure, we'll come on to it and talk a bit about audio visual and that sort of thing. They went during the summer, I guess. We sold a lot of assets in October, November time. But since then, the new instructions, we talked to a lot of accountants, a lot of receivers, a lot of administrators every day. They're all quiet. Now, they're all quiet in terms of instructions, but they're all very, very busy beavering away, looking at potential restructuring and things. And I think if we look at year-on-year insolvencies in Europe, I'll take the big ones. Germany is down 35%. UK is down 42%. France is down 30%. And a similar metric, I guess, is the Chapter 7 in the US, and I'm reading year on year that's down 32%. So I think the picture seems to be the same, and so what we are is we're gearing up ready for next year.
Yeah, and
essentially.
And the interesting part, in Erie County, where we're based, in Erie County, New York, we're down 40% year over year between all bankruptcy filings. And nationally, as you point out, the sevens are down 32%.
Yeah.
If we had this conversation in April or May, we would have been saying, fourth quarter 2020, we're going to be super busy and there's going to be all this insolvency. And this can just keeps being kicked down the road. No one really knows when it's going to stop. And I'm curious if you have any perspective from the European vision side.
While I've said it's a global European, every country's got the same problem. I think coming out of this, different countries will fare differently. Germany and UK, where the insolvency process is much more rigorous, we'll see a lot of companies falling over in May, June time when the money needs to be paid back. In the likes of Spain and Italy, where there's a lot more probably governmental support, they won't be calling that money in as quick. So we'll probably find that has a real tail on it, the Spanish and Italian economies, and probably the French economy, where there's a huge amount of government support. The UK and Germany are very good at killing defunct companies. They have a great process for doing it, and all the strong economies do.
Interesting perspective. The United States is very similar in its approach to bankruptcy as the UK is. And the word that I'm getting from these interviews and talking with other professionals is the first, maybe into the second quarter of 2021. However, we don't know what the new administration is going to do relative to more government stimulus, which if that happens, could push this further into 2021, and we won't be seeing as many as we would have anticipated, similar to what we anticipated in the beginning of this year. So it really remains to be seen here in the U.S. as to how it happens and unrolls.
Yeah. Well, I guess I need to come down to the UK piece now as well, because come January the 1st, we're not in Europe. We've not been in Europe officially since the beginning of this year, but actually the break happens on January 1. So for the UK economy, there's the double whammy of Brexit and COVID and loans need paying back, all kind of coming Q1.
So
end of Q1.
There was an awful lot of angst about Brexit last year, and then it got pushed through. What's your personal opinion on that now, and how do you anticipate that impacting particularly your business?
Okay, so our business, so from the UK point of view, and I've just come off a call on this very subject, is we are not sure about getting people out of the UK into Germany or into Spain or into France or anywhere to go and look at a deal. We don't know what might happen. Now, that's a kind of worst case scenario. But the reality is, how do you plan for the eventuality that Germany, you need a visa to go and visit? Now, I don't expect that to happen. But if you do some contingency planning and say, well, what does Brexit mean for our business? My first issue is I want to buy deals not from the UK but from Europe in euros. So
Right.
we need the entities. So we've got the entities in Spain and in Germany and Italy, so we can do that. So we don't want to be buying from a UK entity if we do buy a deal. And secondly, well, more importantly, firstly, how do you go and look at a deal? Now, I don't think that's going to be a problem, but if I talk to other members of my team, they want to factor that risk in today as we talk about Q1. So
That's a
you can
good
see
idea to
it's-
think about those things.
It's a good idea to think about those things. Yeah. And so, you know, the UK economy has got some real headwinds, above and beyond what we started talking about, which was COVID.
Which was COVID, and now we're talking about Brexit. So,
Well, yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
it's crazy. You know, I mean, you couldn't make it up, really, could you? You know, and it doesn't seem like they're going to make any allowance for the fact that this is hitting the UK economy. The COVID thing is hitting the UK economy.
Yeah.
It's a crazy situation, but that's what we're living with. So, you know, as you said earlier, I think early 2020, we said, okay, by the end of this year, we'll all be back at work, but we'll be really busy, you know, with lots of insolvencies. This is dragging now. And we've also got, I know it's a slightly different subject, but if you think about how the automotive industry that Germany is so reliant on the automotive industry and the supply chain that involves, well, the turmoil and the disturbance, not only in the technology piece, but also no one selling any new cars. I mean, that's another problem that Germany's particularly going to have. But we're closing plants here. We're closing the Honda plant, as you know. There are thousands of suppliers involved in that. You know, they're all going to be pulling out of the UK. And so, you know, it is a real, who knows what's going to happen. You and I worked through the tech bubble bursting in the early thousands. We saw, you know, we did a lot of work in that industry. We went through that crisis with, you know, relatively unscathed in terms of industry and manufacturing. We didn't have a huge amount of insolvencies then. This one feels very different.
Yeah, it does. It feels different to me too, and it is great to reminisce back that we really have known each other that long, and it's great to see you, Duncan. Thanks for joining today on Blackbird TV. It's great. We'll have you on again.
I do hope so.
Cheers.